Every year in February, people in the United States of America celebrate National Black Heritage Month to recognize the contributions and influence of Black Americans to the history, culture, and achievements of America. The mission of our channel is to illuminate the philosophical ideas that have gone unnoticed by both the academia and the general public. So in aligning ourselves with the mission of our goal to spread knowledge and untapped wisdom that has been developed over millennia, we would like to take this moment to commemorate the role that both African and Black American philosophers have played in shaping the African American communities and their immense influence on the world history. So we will begin our journey to study African American philosophy by starting first with ancient Egyptian philosophy in an attempt to truly comprehend their ideas and understand their origins. But before we examine the philosophy of ancient Egyptians, we will first briefly take a look at what African philosophy is. As time passes, because of new discoveries about or orientations toward its past, as well as increasing publications of contemporary African philosophers, African philosophy becomes increasingly difficult to summarize. One common thing that many contemporary African philosophers share is their vigorous debates about the character of philosophical thought in Africa's indigenous cultures. The consensus seems to be that Africans must make it a priority to be clear about the form and content of their various intellectual heritages, but they must not also forget to prioritize issues, problems, and topics directly and primarily relevant to the historical, geographical context and to promote intercultural philosophical dialogue. H. Odera Oruka, a Kenyan philosopher best known for stage philosophy, claims that Africa had always had its philosophical thinkers, whom he referred to as sages, in that rather than merely being the keepers of their culture's traditions, they were also actively and eminently rationally critical of them. In many instances, they displayed critical and analytic abilities that any rational person would grant them the title of genuinely philosophical thinkers. So it is mere prejudice to believe that the philosophical epic of humanity begins first among the Greeks in the 5th century BCE. This prejudice implies that other ancient people did not engage in rational critical thoughts. Just as Dignagas and Dharmakirti in Buddhist logic is no less rigorous than that of Aristotle or Aquinas, so is Zhang's and Dogen's rumination on the nature of being and time any less profound than that of Augustine, Bergson, or Heidegger. The ethical debates too in China and across East Asia among Confucians, Mohists, Taoists, and Buddhists are any less rational and thought-provoking than debates in the Western tradition among the Aristotelians, Platonists, Epicureans, and the Stoics. The same then can be said about the African philosophers, whether they exist during the pre-colonial time or after. There are no doubt vast differences between various methods of investigation and argumentation that exist in other philosophical traditions. But we can also find analogous differences among Western philosophers like Heraclitus, Epictetus, Kierkegaard, and Wittgenstein, and yet we don't hesitate to call them all philosophers. The spirit of Chinese philosophy, Indian philosophy, African philosophy, Arabic philosophy, and European philosophy can all differ greatly in their methods, but philosophy always deals with human knowledge and the elevation of the mind. So there is an urgent need to gain some acquaintance with the traditions of African philosophy from remote times to the contemporary era. Therefore, I'm going to start this African philosophy series by beginning with philosophy from one of the oldest civilizations in the world. Philosophy could be defined as systematic reflective thinking on life. There is not a single philosophy that does not have any relation to all the lives, societies, existence, and the universe. Human beings need to discern what is real, true, right, and eternity, and gaining the ability to discern such things is what makes someone possess wisdom. In Greek, they call it love of wisdom, also known as philosophy, because to philosophize is not just to reflect on nature and find the truth, but also to possess intense desire and strong enthusiasm when one is investigating the underlying reality. So it is not just about the methods that define philosophy, but also about its essential functions. In ancient Egypt, the idea of philosophy referred to the synthesis of all learning and the pursuit of wisdom. It was called sebayit, a field of the wise teachings by the old sages, who were scholars, priests, and statesmen. This is reflected in the Egyptian language, in which wisdom and prudence are expressed by the same word, sai, which depicts a man with hands to mouth. So to be wise and prudent is to be sagacious in handling important matters and exercising good judgment. The word also implies knowledge, also known as rakat, and awareness of the principles of moral conduct and sociable behavior. The wise man is a man whose mind knows what is distinctive and has clarity and loves truth. The German Egyptologist Helmut Brunner translates the inscription of Entef, which gives the definition of a philosopher as follows. The wise man is the one whose heart is informed about these things which would be otherwise ignored, the one who is clear-sighted when he is deep into a problem, the one who is moderate in his actions, who penetrates ancient writings, whose advice is sought to unparalleled complications patience, who is really wise, who instructed his own heart, who stays awake at night as he looks for the right path, who surpasses what he has accomplished yesterday, who is wiser than a sage, who brought himself to wisdom, who asks for advice and see to it that he is advised. The reference to deeply thinking about solving a problem indicates that philosophical thinking is a critical undertaking, something that deals with important issues and is not concerned with what is apparent, obvious, shallow, or insignificant. The philosopher must carry out his actions within reasonable limits and not subjected to extreme views. He champions moderate views or judgments as he looks for truth and seeks out assistance for his journey. So for ancient Egyptians, philosophy requires one to become a critical foundation of knowledge and to possess intellectual rigor, modesty, moderation, and an endless desire for finding truth. In Egyptian language, verbs that express existence are not static, but dynamic. They are verbs of movement that stresses duration and refers to moments of time in verbs like to exist, to be stable or enduring, and to become were dominant in Egyptian thoughts about life and the existence of the universe. For example, the verb unen that comes to mean to exist originally meant to move. So to be a being is to be always moving, and a part of a being is to not be in illusion or delusion. Existence is the synthesis of rest and movement, and it is an unchangeable and indestructible like a divine being. So the concept of existence is closely related to eternity, like their god Ra, who is the highest being, imperishable, eternal, and possesses reality like power, beauty, truth, perfection, and goodness. Existence is also a dynamic process at any point in time. For example, the sentence unan pat unan ich kar I means the sky existed when you were with me. The sky exists and you're with me. So long as heaven shall exist, you shall exist with me. The name given to the resurrected god, Osiris, was Unen Nifar, meaning he whose life was regenerated, and the verb Unen, to exist or to be, evokes the immortality of Osiris. So the meaning of human life was to come to exist as a good, divine being in order to become Osiris, that is immortal and eternal. Columns in the Egyptian temples are interpreted as stability and rising from bottom to top. In other words, the mind is always thinking of the stability of the columns, and humanity builds civilizations on earth to reach to the world of truth and eternity in the sky. The material of the column also means that truth constitutes the real being of the column. The Egyptians, similar to many later Western philosophers like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, believed that in the beginning, the universe was good, perfect, and beautiful. When things come into existence, the essence, like a thing's nature or a person's personality or individual god, dwells in us. This governs our behavior. One of the textual evidence explaining 4 good things the Supreme God did in order to silence evil is as follows. The Creator made wind, i.e., life equally available to all humans. Water is a crucial factor in the formation of the Nile Valley, meaning an assurance of equal access to water meant basic equality of opportunity. All humans are created equal. It means that the Creator had not intended that humans do evil. The final good deed of the Supreme God was to call human attention to the kingdom of the dead, the region of eternal life, and to the God worship and rituals that must be performed in order to attain that immortality. The full verse on the third good deed of the Supreme God runs as follows. I made every human like his fellow. I did not command that they might do evil, but it was their hearts that violated what I had said. That is the third of the deeds. They believe that evil exists because of our essence. Even though God did not create social inequality through our hearts, we devised it. Equality is a divine dispensation, and yet, through our nature, we caused inequality. However, because human nature is good, and mind or consciousness can reason and distinguish rightness from wrongness, the human mind must receive a necessary education to make this distinction and avoid the wrongdoings.